and welcome back to Besties in Book Lore, the series where two besties talk about our most current reads, good and bad. Today we're talking about Onyx Storm. We're really excited about this. It came out a couple weeks ago, and it's been all the buzz on Book Talk and Bookstagram and all the book socials. So, what are your initial thoughts, Kim? What are you thinking?
I feel like this book
There's
was
so
so
much that it's like,
anticipated. Yeah. So it was so anticipated. I finished this book in about 48 hours,
you
which was
finished
on the
it.
early side for people I knew. I read it pretty quickly and then didn't have very many people to talk about it with at the time. I think that if I'm giving my ratings between the three, I think that Onyx Storm is in the middle. I think Fourth Wing is still the best book in the series, but I do think this for me was better than Iron Flame. It left me with a lot of questions, a lot of unhappiness, and a lot of anxiety at the end of that read. So,
Yeah, for sure. I did not go as fast as per usual, but I think I was like at 6 days or something like that. It
yeah.
was a big book. I mean, it wasn't as big as Iron Flame, but it was still a big book, and I didn't want to miss anything. So I didn't want to speed through it, and like, I still feel like I missed things even going at the
Yeah.
pace I went. So I have no regrets, but I do wish that I would have that we could have talked about it when it was fresh for you, but um yeah, I loved it. I enjoyed the experience. I loved being part of the movement that was like everyone being so excited about that book and like scrolling and like when you're done you get to scroll and like look at all the theories and like it felt like a buzz that I was really happy to be a part of. The book itself, I loved. I felt like we got a lot of foreshadowing, a lot of like hints that there's things that are going to be interconnected that we might not know about. Like, it feels like it got deeper in this book, and I really like that. This book gave me more confidence in Rebecca Yarros that she has a direction. I was a little bit worried that we were just kind of like floating, and like I was hoping that she wasn't just making it up as she went. So this book really gave me like the confidence in her that there's a plan. She's weaving in those like you know the things that are going to come to pass later on in the
Yeah.
series, and I was really happy to see that. So
Yeah, I saw somebody who said that they felt like this was the first of the three that was more fantasy than romance, and that they were more balanced in the other two books. But this one, she upped the fantasy as far as upping the politics, upping the gods, upping the magic. All of those things were kind of more powerful in this book than they had been in the previous two. And I definitely agreed with that take.
yeah, yeah, me too. One thing that I found hard was um, keeping up with all the people and the places and what God means what and who has what powers, and it got to be kind of a lot. So that's maybe my one critique. I wish I maybe would have taken notes through it. I'm like definitely a visual person, and so if I could see a chart, what she had in the beginning was helpful, but it's hard because you don't want to give things away in the beginning, so if things get added on and that wouldn't be, I can't refer back to because she didn't even put the idols in the map, which I saw a video of her talking about that, saying that they just felt
Yeah.
like it was going to be spoilers if they
Yeah.
did that. Um,
Yeah, I was talking with another friend and saying, like, on the reread before book four, I feel like we need to start like a notebook, right? And like write down every piece of information starting from Fourth Wing, because I feel like even stuff from Fourth Wing that you thought wasn't important came back in this book. So
yeah,
just not knowing what was important up until this point, like my reread, I felt like helped, but it didn't give me all the information that I really needed because I didn't necessarily focus on what she actually thought was important.
yeah, it's funny because I think we're all just like everything means something, and so when she's like been doing these interviews, a lot of the times she's
Yes.
like everyone's obsessed over like orange dragons are bad, like because one or two people have orange dragons that are bad, and so that means everyone that has orange dragons is bad, and she's like everyone like it's gonna be okay. Like,
She feels so intentional. So when something is not intentional, it feels alarming.
yeah. So I feel like we just all think that we should be on alert for everything, and that's part of the fun of it. I think is like trying to
Yeah.
sift through what's meaningful and what isn't. Um, but yeah,
So speaking of what's meaningful and what isn't, I think we wanted to use this time to kind of talk about some of the theories, some of the cliffhangers at the end. Um, so we could have talked for 3 or 4 hours about all the theories that are out there. These are just
yeah,
the ones that we kind of wanted to focus on. But just know that like this is a small piece of the puzzle. And if you're watching this and have not read Onyx Storm at this point, just stop watching until you
oh yeah,
finished. We've already ruined stuff for you and what we said before, but I can tell you we're gonna spoil the end. Like we're gonna spoil everything for you from here on
yeah,
out. So
definitely, yeah, definite spoiler warning because we wanted to kind of do a deep dive into this book, and you can't really do that without spoiling stuff. So
yeah.
um, yeah,
So the first number one big thing I think that came out of this book is the new brother. That I feel like is the number one discussion I'm seeing on the internet. It's the number one thing people want to talk about with me when they finish the book. Who is it? And so I was actually kind of glad we waited to do this video because Rebecca Yarros gave a bunch of information in her Denver interview that like we didn't have if we had done this, a week ago. So
yeah.
um,
So
so
I'll just say my initial no. Oh, I thought you said no. You said go. I thought you're like no. I'm like okay, sorry. um, okay, so when I first read it, my knee jerk initial reaction was Bodhi because I thought if so I figured the ring that he was giving and like the whole letter and all that said she's yours now that Xaden said to Violet. I thought, okay, well, something must be going on with Bodhi if Bodhi can't take over. So that was like my initial thought, but I've since changed my tune, like seeing what everyone has to say and realizing, okay, maybe it's not Bodhi.
Well, so I think we initially kind of made a list, right, of like who it could have even been. Because we know it had to be somebody who knew that Xaden was Venin already. So that list is decently short, right?
Yeah.
So we said it could have been Bodhi, Garrick, Brennan, Sawyer, Riddick.
I will just say you sent me that list. I'm not going to take any credit for creating that list because you sent it to me. And before you even sent that to me, I didn't realize how like much of a mystery who the brother was. I just thought it was Bodhi. Like, and then you sent me like, this is the list and this is what people are saying. And I'm like, oh, this is like a whole like mystery that needs to be solved. So
yeah, I think she, in her comments in Denver, narrowed it down to either Bodhi or Garrick, right? Like, I don't think that I think that those are kind of the two options that she leads you to with her comments. If you haven't seen it, I would go back and watch some of the clips from it. But she says it's somebody who's missing. We know at the end of the book, Garrick is missing. We do not know at the end of the book if Bodhi is missing. She also says that it's somebody who was not happy with what they had been given.
Yeah. Which made me think of Bodhi, though, because Bodhi had this whole, like, story where he, feels like he's in Xaden's shadow. He wants to be like Xaden, but, like, he also doesn't really want the responsibility of Tyrandor and, like...
and I think also he's in an interesting situation with Violet at the end of the book where his signet does not work on Venin. And so Violet basically tells him to leave. Like, you are not helpful to me. I need you to leave. And that he doesn't want to go. And it's pretty hard to get him to go. His dragon ends up picking him up and kind of carrying him out of that situation. And so I don't think in that moment he felt happy about his signet. Also, Garrick is very not happy with how much power he has at the end, especially with trying to save Imogen, Harry Quinn. He's very low on power and energy at the end. So
now I'm on Garrick. I think it's Garrick now. And mostly because of a video that I saw where they like put up the words of the scene where he's with Imogen and he's like carrying her out, and it says something along the lines of like the earth turned gray underneath them.
Yeah, we went back and reread that part because I was like, what is happening here? So if you read it, the Venom are draining the walls of power. Garrick says that before that line. He says, like, we need to go. The Venom are draining the walls of power. And then Imogen says, like, the spot where Garrick is standing is drained. Now, you could assume that it's drained by the other Venom.
Right.
But it's not clear.
But weird, because he's like, doesn't she say something about his eyes? I know she doesn't say they're red or anything, but she says like he looks worn out and like his
that his eyes look like kind of drawn in, like she can tell that he looks very weak, and then magically has enough power to carry both of them, and so it seems like in a large amount of power for somebody who is so drained at this point in battle.
Yeah. So I think I'm Team Garrick now. I definitely started just assuming that it was Bodhi, but nothing's ever as we assume, like right away.
No, and knowing we're gonna have this whole discussion, and it's gonna be somebody we didn't even.
I know.
See, but, I feel confident that it's one of the two of them, and I think you can justify both of them. I still am Team Garrick, but I think the justification there is fine, because the reason a lot of people are giving for Bodhi too is he doesn't want Tyrandor, but Violet could have married Xaden to take it, whether he's Venom or not, so that he didn't have to have it. Like, to me, that didn't have to go hand in hand for her to be able to take Tyrandor. So
okay, so the next one is the ring that Xaden gives Violet. We are all hoping, I guess I'll speak for myself, I'm hoping that he's like Horcruxed himself into this ring. Like his soul is in the ring. But also he was with it enough for them to go on this whole like excursion where they got married, you know, whatever happened in the time and that her memories have been erased. He had enough of himself, you know, to still have those desires and want to figure things out and make sure that, you know, Tyrandor and Violet are taken care of. And so I don't know if it's just like a kernel of his soul is still in him, or if it's in the ring, or like what the situation is, but I do think something is going to be significant about the ring, especially because we know that is it an emerald?
It's an emerald ring, yep.
The emerald that was presumably from the sword of Tyrandor, right? Because it was missing that stone.
Mm-hmm. So it was missing for a long time.
Does it have its own power innately? Did they put power into it? Is Xaden's soul in the ring? I mean,
is it a rune?
Is it a rune? I laughed so hard. I saw an interview where somebody asked Rebecca Yarros to explain runes to her like they were a kindergartner. I'm like, that's me. I'm like a little confused about the rune thing, like, but how she described it and how she, like, what she said was helpful. So,
yeah, I think what you're bringing up is a big question, though, is like what part of Xaden was left at the end, right?
Yeah.
After he became more Venom, he says that he's not an initiate anymore. So, like, what part of him is left? And I think a big piece of that conversation is around the only times he's ever used his Venom power were to save other people. He's never, ever used it to be malicious, to hurt somebody. He's done it to save Violet, to save Garrick, to save, you know, his people. Like, he's done it to save others. And so how does that impact his soul compared to a Venom who's using it for malicious intent? And how much of his soul is really left? Like, how much is gone versus how much remains?
Yeah.
I don't think we have an answer to that, but I do think that is kind of like, does he even have enough to put into something else? Like,
I feel like that will tell us a lot of what we're walking into in the fourth book. Are we walking into like a villain Xaden, like full morally black Xaden? Or is he still kind of in that struggle of like wanting more power? But still being good, and
Yeah.
for good.
The other thing is the emerald is the stone of rebirth. Like that's what an emerald is known for. So it feels intentional that she picked an emerald and not a different stone, right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
tons of other stones she could have picked. She picked an emerald, and continued with that emerald, right? Like
yeah,
that feels not, she does a lot of things purposefully that feels purposeful for me.
yeah. I definitely think the ring has more to it than we
Yeah,
know now. So interesting to think about.
it is. Well, now that we've talked about the fact that Zayden and Violet get married at the end, Violet doesn't have any recollection
And
of their
she's not
wedding.
pregnant, everyone. She's not
Not
pregnant.
pregnant. Thank God she's not
I
pregnant.
hated that theory.
Hated it. Hated it. I want Violet. I want Violet's true disability representation to show that would just negate that storyline. So I was glad she spoke out against that. But they're married. But is that it? I think is the big question. And so Alex knows this is my favorite theory, that I think that they're mated in some way. I can't speak to how exactly that looks, because I do think in romantasy and fantasy books, being mated is a different meaning depending on what world you're in, right? The author has some leeway to kind of wiggle that. We know in ACOTAR it's that they can hear each other. In other books it has different kind of value, but I don't know what she'll make of that. But I think that they are. And my reasoning is, I think Taryn tells her that they are. He multiple times comments and calls Zayden her mate.
Yeah.
She finally says to him that their humans don't mate, but he's been saying it all along. And then I'll give a shout out. The other thing my husband said was, he said, well, Zayden's also been telling her. And he said, Zayden has been saying to her all along, what we are transcends boyfriend and girlfriend, a couple. Like, he's been using all this terminology and referencing how they're more than a normal relationship. And so both of those things to me make it seem like there's some sort of mated bond there. I think the biggest theory is that they're mated related to the gods. Rebecca Yarros has said the gods are very important moving forward. So, yeah.
I will say
Alex,
I
your
love
thoughts?
I love the idea of war and love being like the overall arc of this whole series. So
Yeah.
that I'm on board for. I'm not in love with the
And I
mates.
think being clear that we mean that Zayden is the love part of this and that
Yes,
Violet
yes,
is the war part of this. It's
right,
not
right.
switched. And I think that is an important distinction in
Yeah,
this theory,
and also
right?
something that I love too.
Yeah.
Because at first glance you would think Zayden would be war and
Yeah.
love, but I think as the series goes on, they each fall more into the opposite
Yeah.
one. But I'm not in love with the mates theory, and I'll tell you why. I don't like something I don't love in a fantasy book is when their rules have been established and then it's just like, but this time it doesn't, like, that doesn't count. Like, we know that mates for humans like have not existed, or if they have, it's been so few that it's not common knowledge. And so I don't love the idea of it just being like, just kidding, like these two are actually mates and no one else can be. Like, I don't love that. I can be convinced though. Like, there's wiggle room. I can see it being done where I'm like, okay, like that makes sense. And I do think that Violet and Zayden are gonna be like the way out of all of this mess. In whatever that means, like in some way. And so if that has to do with that, if they have to be mates for that to happen, okay. But I also just feel like there has to be a function to them being mates. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think Rebecca Yarros is just going to be like, oh, they're mates, like, just because it makes us feel happy and fuzzy
Agree.
inside. I think it's going to have to be for a reason. So
That's why I think it's related to the gods, because I agree with you. I think that she has to have some function. And that's why I said at the beginning, like, I don't know what this means in her world, right? But they have some otherworldly connection to each other that isn't just they love each other and now he's vented and he's gone and like, that's the end. Like, haha, so funny. Like, there's some other reason why they have to be together, and it feels like beyond them. But I don't know in her world what's going to make sense. Because her world, while it's fantasy, is kind of less fantasy than other series that there are mated pairs.
Yeah. Another theory that you brought to me was that Taryn and Sigale are possibly unmated. Like they broke their mating bond at the end of this, because if Sigale decides to go with Xaden, they won't be able to be together. That made me really sad, first of all. I don't love it.
I've actually seen the theory that Andarna is the one who broke their mating bond, and that's why she had to return.
How does that work? How could she break
Because the Feathertails have like special power to break bonds, which we know because they break the bond between Violet and Andarna. And that Andarna breaks the bond between Taryn and Sigale to help them. Like, not to be malicious, but because like they asked her to do that, and then that's how.
I did think that maybe Violet and Xaden being mates was important. If that was true, then they needed to have a way where they could still communicate, like, telepathically. So that was another thing, like, reason for them being mates, like, having a function in that way. But
yeah,
interesting. I don't know. We'll have to see how it unfolds.
To me, this is one where I need a reread because I need to focus on the gods in my reread. I need to read a lot of those top Easter eggs that she has in Fourth Wing and Iron Flame where the gods are mentioned, and I just kind of glossed over it because I didn't figure it was super important, and now I'm realizing that, like, I regret my life choices of not paying that good attention to those ones specifically about the gods. So
yeah, it's fun. It's gonna be fun to go back and, like, I know people are already rereading Onyx Storm and finding things, but I think I'm gonna need a little time before I go back in. But it will be
especially because I know I'll want to reread all 3 before book 4 comes out. We're looking at probably about 2 years until that happens, and so doing a reread now is not going to help me remember something in 2 years. So exactly. I'd rather see it again with fresh eyes and be able to go back to some of these theories and, you know.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to wait too long because you don't want to lose too much, but you want it to be close enough to, like, the new book that like, helpful. But okay, do you want to go into the theory of 6?
Yeah, so we have one more theory that we both really liked. It seems like is important to Rebecca Yarros because we know this number is very important to her in her own life. And so it's this theory of 6. So that there's 6 gods in her world, 6 first riders for the original riders, that there are 6 different Navarian dragon dens. There are 6 missing eggs at the end. And the rumor is, okay, well, who are the 6 riders of this generation? 6 is important to Rebecca Yarros. She has 6 kids. It feels like that number is important because she uses it many times throughout the series. And so it would be that each one of these were related to a god in some way. We know she said the gods are important again. So obviously Violet and Xaden are considered 2 of the 6 important riders. They have 2 of the most important signets. So I guess the question is, who do we think else it is? Why do we like this theory?
Yeah. I really loved this theory. It's not something that in my, like, the way my brain works, I could have never put all of this together. So I'm really glad that there are people out there that, like, can put these things together and put them out there in the world for me to be like, oh my gosh, like, this makes so much sense because, my brain just doesn't work this way. But I think we've established that Violet would be the god associated with the god of war. I mean, it hasn't been said, right? But, like,
I think the implication is there because we know about her father trying to dedicate her. So there's already a connection there. The high priestesses have already shared that connection with her. That comes up multiple times about, like, her pathway and things like that. It feels she wouldn't have another pathway with a different god being partially dedicated, I think.
Yeah. And then Xaden, they're saying that he's associated with the goddess of love.
Just want to add in that theory, that is the only island that they do not visit on their quest.
Yeah, and that's for sure something. And
there's a reason why they don't go there. They skip it and say, well, they don't have an army, they're not going to help us.
And Xaden's kind of like, Violet makes the decision. She's the decision maker at that point for whatever reason. And Xaden kind of just looks at her like...
He doesn't comment.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's interesting. I almost wonder, like, if we went there, would it be like, I don't know, what would have happened?
I think Xaden will go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just because the quest squad didn't go there doesn't mean Xaden won't.
Yeah, and Xaden is missing a lot in the first 2 books. I feel like there's times where he, like, is off on, like, secret business or something.
And in this book, there's times that he's missing as well. So... Yeah.
So who knows?
And we assume it's because he's like recovering from being venom some of the times, but it doesn't mean that he's at Arisha. So some unaccounted for times for Xaden in all 3 books.
Yeah. So also to say that Violet has a black dragon, Xaden has a blue dragon. Thinking maybe the types of dragons are affiliated with types of god, like different gods. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's said that Riddick is possibly associated with Zinal, the god of luck, because he says that he favors him.
Yes.
And
he has a good experience in Quest Squad on the island as well, so he doesn't get something that's horrible. Yeah. So like that feels like it's extra lucky, right?
Yeah, also, just a side point, the compass. Is the compass going to be something?
100% yes.
Yeah, it's got to be.
She did speak, I think it was Denver. She said all of the gifts from Zinal, the island where they worship Zinal, are important. But they said, can you give us more information? And she said no.
Yeah.
So they're definitely all important. And that includes the empty box, the broken compass. Like it's not just broccoli, the slap and the kiss. So,
yeah. Okay.
But yes. So Riddick definitely, it feels like he's favored by luck.
Yeah. And he has a brown dragon, just as a side note. The next one would be Brennan. And his would be the god of death, Malik.
Yeah.
And he has an orange dragon. But why are we saying this? Because he, like...
skirted death?
From the dead, or, like, he avoided death.
I mean, I think there's more to it, and we could go into a whole hour-long conversation about Brennan and why he seems to kind of circulate around death. His death was kind of shady.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of unanswered questions surrounding his fake death.
And then the next one is Rhiannon, the Queen of the Gods, Amari. This one, I feel like we got some foreshadowing in the chapter. When it goes from Violet to Rhee's perspective, she says something about her being, I can't remember the wording. It was like the best.
She says that her sister would be praying to Zinal right now for luck, but she never feels like she needs to pray to Zinal for luck in this situation. She would just be praying to Amari.
Right.
And specifically comments that. She mentions Amari at the beginning, and they even say that she looks like Amari at one point.
Okay, yeah. And so, but also I was referring to Violet, when Violet says, she kind of like cues off on the end of her point of view before it goes to Rhee. She's like, I'm not the best of them all, she is, or something like that. I can't remember what the wording was. And I'm like, that's kind of interesting, because Amari is the queen of the gods. Like, that would be the, the best of the best, essentially. Mm-hmm. So I was like, interesting. And Rhiannon has a green dragon. So far we have all different dragons. And the person who put this theory out there, at least the one that I saw, I'm sure other people did too, but they said that it kind of fell apart for them at the end, because she thinks that Arik We have this whole debate on, is it Auric, Eric? It is Auric, but sometimes I say Eric. I don't know why. Anyway, Auric would be associated with the god of wisdom. Hedion? I don't know how to say that either, but the god of wisdom. But he has a red dragon. Or no, sorry. He has a brown dragon? He has a blue dragon. I'm going to get it right one of these times. He has a blue dragon. And we're looking for a red dragon if it does need to be one of each in this theory. So that's where she said it kind of fell apart there. People who have a red dragon would be Dane or Sloane. I think those are the only ones that would kind of like...
Yeah, I mean, I think what we learned at the end of this book is Dane and Sloane are both going to be very important characters moving forward. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. I think Auric is also going to be a very important character. So I think the other important characters that we're missing here that are pretty powerful are Garrick and Imogen.
Yes.
And neither one of them are mentioned in this theory, but could also be... We're thinking of riders that have a significant amount of power too, right? So not just a connection to the god. That's where, like, I think she's alluded to Rhea having, being related to Amari, but I don't think of Rhea as being very powerful. Riddick, at first people are like, oh, his power doesn't seem that strong. But then he talks about how he can freeze the inside of an orange and that most ice wielders cannot do that.
Yeah.
So he doesn't outwardly say like Riddick has a lot of power, but she tells you things that make you believe that he has more power than other people with his signet.
And she said, like, when he did the orange, she's like, could you do this to a person? And he's like, well, I haven't done it, obviously, but like that's a big...
Yeah, that's a pretty powerful signet.
Like, freeze someone like that.
Yeah. I mean, we know that Auric's signet is very powerful. So I think that leads for him, right? Like we don't know how much he's seeing as a precog, but like a lot. And she said his power came before Quest Squad. So he's had it for a while and been able to utilize it.
Yeah.
We know Dane has a lot of power.
Yeah.
So it tells us Dane has a lot of power.
I like the idea of Eric being the god of wisdom, though. So I wish that was true.
I think it could be Dane.
But
I think it could be Dane.
We don't know.
Dane has a lot of power. He has a signet that's related to the mind. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, I don't think we're going to have it all figured out without all the information that will come in the next 2 books, but it is fun to think about, and I do think it's headed in the right direction.
This theory specifically, I feel like we won't get an answer for until the last book, right? Like this isn't even going to come out in book 4 necessarily, because this is just so hefty of a thought process. We're still like building towards something.
Last book. Yeah, this is like last book. Epiphany.
Yeah, I think some of the things we talked about, the ring, the new brother, maybe even the mates, could come up in the next book. But this theory of 6, I feel like, is a final book type of thing. So
yeah, but I think we'll get more information maybe though in the next book, like that'll help us work on the theory a little bit more and hone it in. But yeah, I think you're right. All
right, so any last lingering thoughts that you're like, I have to talk about this thought before we wrap up?
I don't know. I just really liked it. I liked the balance of romance and fantasy. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's pretty much it. I like that Dane is like being redeemed a little bit. I'm excited for him and Sloane.
We got his redemption arc and I'm here for it.
Yeah, I like it. I don't think he was ever really malicious. I think that there was a misunderstanding, and I think he did overstep by using his power on Violet without asking.
Yeah, but you can understand it more as it's gone on. In Fourth Wing, I felt less understanding. In Onyx Storm, I felt more understanding.
Yeah, and really in Iron Flame, he kind of redeems himself there too, because he stays on their side. He goes away from, what is it? He goes with them away from.
Yeah, from Basgiath. He leaves Basgiath with them. Yeah.
So
he killed Varys.
Is big, So, he gets a lot of flack, but I think he's a good person. I don't think we have to worry about him turning bad or anything. But
I agree. I
don't know,
think
what
my
about you?
bold take for book 4 is I think that Violet and Xaden will be separate a good chunk of the book. I think that you and I have read enough romantasy series, and pretty much every single one that I've read, the second to last book in the series, the main female character and main male character are apart for whatever the purpose is of that story, but they tend to be apart for any length of time. I don't think she's going to do the full book apart, which has been done in other series where the whole book they're apart. I don't think she'll do that, but I do think that they will be apart more than they've ever been before.
Yeah, I was expecting that for this book, so it wouldn't surprise me. I was actually like pleasantly surprised that we didn't get that in Onyx Storm.
Yeah, she
Um,
set it up where it could have happened and it never did. So
yeah, yeah,
it's coming.
it's coming, unfortunately. But you know, absence makes the heart grow fonder, so maybe it will be for the best. Anyway, I'm happy that like she keeps us on our toes, and there's just like more to enjoy. I mean, we're sad that the next book won't come out likely until like 2027 or something, but
Yeah, probably.
at least this experience that we're all having is going to last a while. I mean, we're all going to be really
Yeah.
sad when it's over, I think. So, silver lining.
Yeah, I think we also have some other really good books to look forward to. I know you and I already are talking about some good books that we want to talk about together on here, so
Yeah.
we'll have some good books to fill our time with until we get back to her. But she is a smart writer. Her books are so enjoyable to read. Um, she just writes well that you want to continue to know more about her world. So
Yeah. Yeah. I've been impressed.
yeah,
I definitely gained more respect and more confidence in Rebecca Yarros through this book. So, I'm grateful for that.
agree.
All right, well, I think that's it for this video, but we'll be back. Who knows with what? But
Hopefully, talking about some of our January reads.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, so that will be nice. And let us know your unhinged theories and overall thoughts of Onyx Storm. It's just fun for us all to like have this experience together. So let us know what you thought. And
Yes.
until next time, I guess. All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye.